Actually, I'm going to jump into chat and then we're going to do US oil. I'm going to make fun of Queen Cathy for a little bit and then we can go into our crypto and commodities. So, Manny, message retracted ×3. So apparently he hates me now. I took too long to talk to him. Sorry, Manny. Aldrich Kin says, where can I find this moving average indicator? Aldrich, the moving average indicator is the TJD master, and it is actually something that is like encompasses my trading strategy and is only available to group members. I have a private Discord group. If you didn't want to be part of the Discord group, that's fine. You could technically just pay to be in it for a month and then have you get access to the indicator permanently. It's $100 a month, $80 after you're in the group to stay as long as you want, but the indicator is yours forever. So essentially you could just buy it for $100 if you didn't want to be part of the group. If you did want to be part of the group, that's fine as well. But it is private. It's something, maybe I'll release it eventually for free. But right now it's just one of the perks that I offer to the group members. So it is not available currently, unfortunately, to the public. Okay, so let's talk about oil and Cathie Wood and what's going on here. So obviously oil looking strong, got the perfect bounce off the 200 exponential and support as expected. Back up here, getting ready to retest the highs, back at 72 as expected. Perfect bounce off the 200 exponential and support. I just want to talk about Cathie Wood's macro and how this woman is like absolutely delusional, and I'm too pessimistic to jump back in on 42,000. Oh, no, Bitcoin you're talking about? Or Dow. I mean, it could be either one. Let's take a look at oil here. So, okay, I want to read a tweet from Cathie. Obviously, her macro is that everything's going to go clean energy. Everything's going to go EV. Oil is no longer useful, blah, blah, blah. So this purple line right here is Cathie Wood's tweet from July 15th, 2020. And she tweeted out ARK Invest. Well, she tweeted from ARK Invest. ARK Invest believes that the oil price peaked at more than $135 per barrel in 2008, which I don't disagree with, and has been hitting lower highs and lower lows as demand growth has disappointed expectations for the last 12 years. Don't necessarily disagree with that. It probably did, or technically at this point in time has peaked. But then she followed up on her own personal Twitter account in response to ARK Invest's tweet and said, oil demand probably hit a secular peak last year, and thanks to EVs now is in secular decline. Though ARK has no formal forecast, I believe oil prices are on their way back to $12, the level reached after 1973 oil cartel crisis, or lower, now that EVs are taking off. And by or lower, she later came out and said that she expects oil to head back down from somewhere in between $3 to $12 per barrel. So that was right here after, obviously, you know, like she said, and again, I totally agree, secular decline, sure, definitely, probably never will see new all-time highs on oil. Totally agree. But this is when she tweeted it right here, this purple line. Since then, oil went back on top of the 200 exponential and simple moving average and has been melting up to the upside, came down and retested the 200 exponential and simple, and looks more than likely like it's headed back to new highs, at least temporarily. So from when she sent out her tweet, oil is up roughly 80%. So 80% up. And obviously we see that she said that it had reached its high last year. She expected this was the high back here. We actually retested or took out that high on our little push up here in July of 2020. So we're more than likely going to be pushing through that high, in my opinion. So let's look at the macro chart and see what we're paying attention to here. So here we have our macro chart. This is the high that ARK Invest was talking about. I totally agree. We will probably never see that high again. But if we look at the Fibonacci based on that being our all-time high and essentially like the previous low being back here in May of 1986, which was around $8.68 or $9. You know, that's our low to our high. We've sold off to the 786 on that massive capitulation dump down here. We came back up. This is trading very technically is what I'm getting at. Came back up perfectly to the 236, retested it here in 2011, basically retested it here in 2013, failed to break above it, and then we came down to the 886 perfectly. So we came all the way to the top. We broke down to the 786. We came back to the 236. We broke down perfectly to the 886 for our low here in 2016, after which we pushed back to the upside and came up almost perfectly to the 0.5. Are you guys sensing a pattern here? Probably. That was in September of 2018, and the peak she was talking about, at which point in time we sold back off, you know, arguably took out the low of all time as oil went to $0 a barrel, you know, whatever. There's obviously some macro factors there. So again, we say it went down to the low or to the 0 or whatever, at which point in time we broke back to the upside and then we came back up to the 0.5. So in my opinion, what are we looking at right now? Well, on the macro, we're looking at a bottoming pattern right here. So we're back on top of the 200 exponential and the slope is flipped over blue. We're back on top of the 200 simple on the monthly and the slope has flipped over blue. So I don't know if you want to call this just a double bottom or, you know, what situation. What am I looking for? The round, yeah. Depending on what you want to call it, I'm looking at it as, you know, basically something like this. Damn it. I'm looking at it as something like this, roughly. You know, we basically have something like a Eve situation right here on oil. I'm going to make this bright so hopefully you guys can see it pretty good. You know, we have basically a rounding bottom taking place, and then I'm looking at this as a atom situation. And again, this is like what we were talking about earlier, how there's two ways a market can bottom or top. Okay? So in my opinion, this is an Eve, this is a rounding bottom, this is an atom. It's like a very sharp or V-shaped recovery. You can have the same situation in a top. This is an atom, you know, type top or a blow-off top. And then this is more of like, you know, an Eve rounding top type situation. Obviously, they don't have to hit the exact same line, but if they do, it's much more reliable. But to me, this looks like an Adam and Eve bottom right here. So we're back here retesting the heart line or the neckline of the Adam and Eve or resistance of the Adam and Eve. So if we break through this, we would expect our move to be from the bottom of the pattern to basically the neckline. So if you want to do aggressive, you could do the full Adam. If you want to do conservative, you could do just the Eve. It's like slightly smaller. But that's what I'm paying attention to. So if we do break through this, as I'm expecting, you know, based on oil prices and what's taking place right now and the macro being back above the 200 exponential and simple, I'm expecting us to move from somewhere around like the mid 70s where we are now up to 118. Well, if we pay attention once again, what is that going to take us back to? It's going to take us back to the 236. So it would not be unrealistic for me to think that oil, you know, obviously my target is $95 a barrel for oil, you know, 95, call it 100, just because I expect $100 oil. But realistically, I think based on the Fibonacci's, based on the way this has been technically trading and how accurate it has been, I really think that we're going to come back up here and retest this area right here. I think that's our target. So what I'm trying to illustrate as a point right now is obviously oil is trading very, very technically. It's very much like following these Fibonacci's. And, you know, if it's a little tough to see because of the moving averages, well, you can see it's very clearly perfectly touching these Fibonacci lines for support and resistance, you know, in many, many places on this monthly time frame. So if we break through here, our next target is going to be that $94 range. After that, it's going to be $114. So if we just do a, you know, basically from where we're at now, just to get a rough idea of what we're expecting, another like roughly 58% to the upside in oil, and obviously like 18 to 19%. If we start to break down below the 618 and don't hold it as support, I would assume that we're going to break back down and retest the lows, at which point in time maybe we come back down. It's an inverted Adam and Eve. Maybe we come back down to $12 a barrel and Cathie's right, or $3, or maybe oil goes to zero because we don't need it anymore because we have cold fusion. I don't know. Whatever, any of those situations could happen. But right now, this chart looks very likely to me that it's going to go up to here. So my point is that from when Cathie put out her tweet about oil going to $12 a barrel, if we hit my target, oil will be up roughly 177% in that time period, but it's up now roughly like 80% or something like that. So, and obviously we have momentum in our favor. Everything looks bullish here. Everything looks bullish here. Bulls are clearly in control. And then if we flip back on our moving averages as well, we will see on the monthly, we are above the 200 exponential, we are above the 200 simple, and we have the 8 and 21 cross to the upside. So everything that we use to determine trend tells us on the monthly scale that we're in a bullish uptrend. Now, if we go to the weekly, is it possible that, we immediately break through this? Definitely is. We're above 200 exponential. We are above the 821. We saved the trend right here. We're at resistance. We have momentum in our favor. We're potentially developing bearish divergence. Does not mean we don't push up first to $100 and then see a big sell back off, and then we have to see where that comes up. So we definitely have a couple drives of bearish divergence, but typically the third drive will be some ridiculous unsustainable level. So that's probably going to be our pushback up to $100. And then if we go to our daily time frame, we bounced perfectly off of the 200 exponential and simple as expected, obviously. And again, you see Cathie's tweet was off of resistance at the 200 exponential and simple. Not unrealistic, but at no point in time has she revised her situation. And then even after we were back on top of the 200 exponential and simple, she was doing interviews in late 2020, early 2021, saying she expected oil to go to $3 to $12 per barrel. So oil did pretty good, obviously, since then. And, let's compare that now. Let's compare that now to how Cathie has been doing since then. So, and my point being in this, that we have to be careful that she's not just been successful and pitching a narrative. And because she is making 0.75% or 0.75% on whatever, $75 billion in her actively managed ETF, so she's making 0.75% of 75 billion. So let's just call it, round it off, and let's just say she's making roughly $500 million to actively manage the ARK funds. So it's in probably her best interest to get as much money into these funds for as long as possible and just skim it off the top, okay? So if she has roughly, I think she said recently, I could have looked myself, but I thought it was closer to $100 billion, but maybe it's 75 billion like she said. Maybe it was an old interview, I don't know. But roughly, let's just kind of look at where ARK is at right now. So this is ARKK, okay? This is her big fund. It's at 117.75, and let's look back to that. So December 2020, December 4th of 2020, that's where her fund is at. So literally the biggest bull market of all time, the most massive run-up of all time, the S&P, Dow Jones, basically you can throw a dart at a dartboard and you're up somewhere between 20 to 100%. Oil is up, 75% plus, and she has done absolutely nothing. Her ARKK active managed fund is still at December 2020 prices. So you're coming up on, at this point in time, we're halfway through the 9th month of the year. You're almost 3 quarters in, and you have made no one any money in your actively managed, 75 to $100 billion. While you skim off the top 500 million to $1 billion. So, and remember what I was saying too about ARK topping out back here and saying that, she got in on some stuff and now she's probably going to underperform for the next 1 to 5 years. Well, so far it's playing out perfectly. So, and then if we look back at the time frame and when she made her tweet, this was her tweet about oil. Obviously her fund was going absolutely parabolic then. It was much smaller at the time, but this is when she put out her tweet on oil. So if we go from that point right there to the top of her fund right there, she was up 100%. So ARK doubled from that point in time. Congratulations, Cathie. You did well. But if we go to current price action right now, she's up 51%. So if you literally paid oil nothing because you can just invest in oil and not pay her fee, or if you just went into, you know, an ETF or actively managed ETF or whatever, oil has done better over that period of time than she has. And it looks like it's getting ready to go absolutely parabolic. So, and then if we start looking at the actual technical analysis on ARK and my targets, well, let's pay attention to it over here. We're basically barely hanging on to the 200 exponential. The 200 simple has crossed above it. We tried to break back out to the upside. We've put in a series of lower highs and could not break through our clear resistance here. We're barely hanging on to the 200 exponential. Each time we have bounced the 200 exponential, we have seen a weaker bounce, including a invalidation break. It looks like this thing is getting ready to just fall off a cliff. So now if we look at Fibonacci's on old CATHIE's ARK fund and see how she's been doing based on our Fibonacci's. Well, if we go from the bottom down here in March 2020, obviously the crash, to the top right here, put our Fibonacci's in place, the initial sell-off took us down perfectly to, let me make this a little brighter so you guys can see. This came down perfectly to the 236, telling us based on this trend right here that the Fibonacci level was confirming that ARK had in fact topped out. We hit the 236, we hit the 236, we broke down from the 236, came back up and put in a lower high, took profits on a little scalp trade right there. It underperformed the potential breakout of the channel. And now what does it look like it's doing now? It looks like it's getting ready to come back down to the macro 236 in green here once again, at which point in time I would expect it to break down to a lower low, at which point in time the 382 would be our next target. That would take us down to $87 or potentially 50% Fibonacci retracement back down here to like $72. So if ARK's roughly at $75 billion right now and her fund sells off from this point and hits the 382 target, that is 25% gone. So if we're saying she has 75 billion to 100 billion in her ARK funds, and all the charts for all the funds look exactly the same, basically, give or take a couple percent. You know, we're basically looking at CATHIE losing roughly somewhere around a quarter of $75 billion. So roughly around like 17 to, if she has $1 billion total, or just 75 billion versus 100 billion, we're looking at CATHIE losing roughly somewhere between 18 and 25 billion dollars if we hit my next target right here while oil goes parabolic. Or if she all of a sudden sees a big capitulation move in her funds and we see that 37% sell-off, we're looking at a $25 billion loss on the short end to somewhere around $37 billion loss. So that's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm expecting from CATHIE in the near future. I'm expecting her narrative to play out in the opposite direction. I think she's right in the long term about genomics and, you know, EVs and clean energy and all this stuff. But I think her timing is way, way off. She took advantage, in my opinion, of a parabolic bubble, you know, and the most bullish run ever, but she's telling everyone this is definitely not a bubble. She's still pitching this ridiculous narrative that has been invalidated. If she actually was using technical analysis and paying people millions of dollars to do all this research and had any idea what she was talking about, one, she wouldn't be underperforming literally anything in the market for the last year, and two, she would have admitted a while ago that she was wrong about oil on the short term, that oil was going to continue higher, and then eventually maybe it was going to go back down to $12 sometime in 5 years or 10 years or 25 years or 100 years, whatever her time frame was. But instead, she has literally just stuck to her guns while oil has outperformed any of her ARK funds, and it looks like realistically she's probably going to see a massive sell-off. And if you say to me, you're just a hater, ARK funds outperforming everybody, she's amazing, Queen CATHIE is the best. Well, let's look back at ARK fund and see what happened from its inception here in 2014 to when it took out its high and started back into a bull run. We saw ARK initially in 2014, October, to the low back here in February of 2016. So for roughly, like, let's say a little over 2 years, it lost 28% of its value, and then eventually took out the high after 825 days. So it went sideways to down for 3 years. Okay. And then after that, it did phenomenal. Great job, CATHIE. You crushed it. You basically went into another bull run. You did 123%. Congratulations. You outperformed the market, I'm sure. And that was over a 575-day period. So 1.5 years. At which point in time, once again, it topped out in August of 2018. At which point in time, from the top to the bottom right here, the CVD dump, whatever, it lost 33% of its value, and it went sideways for roughly 579 days. Oh, that's weird. Another year and a half basically sideways and 33% down, at which point in time it finally took out the previous high right here and went into the run that we previously discussed, which was obviously what she got famous off of. So she basically did 195% to the upside. Great job, Cathie. Obviously, like doubling people's money that got in off of that move. And that took roughly 336 days, so roughly 1 year to the upside. So what am I expecting here? Probably her to underperform for roughly, 600 days or something like that. She's probably going to underperform, 3 years, 825 days right here from top to breakout right here, 639 days right here. So probably for like the next 2 years. And then obviously from when we topped out to right now, it's already been like 9 months, 212 days. So how long does it take her to basically get back to break even from the all-time highs and continue to the upside? Well, probably 600 or so days or something like that. So that's my opinion on Cathie. That's a legitimate look at how she's done over time. Obviously she caught a lot of attention and everything, but when we look at, if you look at from basically her fund's inception to its all-time high, she's up 670%. That's obviously good. From 2014 to 2020, technically 2021. So, roughly, I guess, no, that's the end of 2020. So roughly we're looking at basically, a 6.5, 7 year period, 670%. That's obviously very, very good, over that time period. But let's just remember that the majority of that was from this run right here. So, and that was assuming you got in at like fund inception at $20. So I just think that people need to be very, very careful, because no matter what happens with ARK, Cathie is going to stick to her guns. She's going to continue to just pitch over and over again EVs and Tesla and cryptocurrency and oil's going to die and autonomous taxis and genomics and this, that, and the other. And just keep in mind, she has literally made no one any money this whole year. For over 9 months, 9.5 months this year, she has made no one any money. And if you look at the size of her fund going up to the top here, it was like a couple $1 billion here, and now it's 75 billion. So, or 100, depending on, I should have looked that up, honestly. But, roughly, it's tripled, quadrupled in size or whatever from when this run up was, and all she's done is lose people money or made them miss out on a bull run. And she probably is going to lose another like 18 to 35 billion dollars. And while that takes place, she's going to skim off the top of that fund roughly, 750 million to 1 billion. So she's going to become a billionaire roughly while everybody else loses money. So probably worth paying attention to, because she comes out here and just sticks to her guns and everything, but she doesn't admit when she's wrong about stuff or when her time frame is not going to work out. So if I was going to lose people money and I was going to skim roughly 0.75% off of $100 billion fund, so I was going to make, a nice chunk of change, roughly $1 billion, let's say, over a year period for myself or for my fund or whatever, I would be like, oh, no, I got a 5-year time horizon. So, because by then you'll have made like $5 billion. So you're like, it looks like I was wrong. Sorry, guys. My fund actually underperformed everything and completely crashed. And I did lose billions and billions of dollars for you guys. But I did make $5 billion myself, actively managing your fund. So, but anyway, that's my Cathie Wood hate. Remember, this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile. Please do your own research, trade responsibly, but understand that just because someone had good results in the past does not mean they're going to have good results in the future. It's very important that you look at various times throughout a fund or a fund manager's career and see how they did. Because if you were the person that bought into the fund and it lost 30% or went sideways for 3 years and lost nothing, that sucks pretty bad. If you were the person that, bought in during the euphoria, obviously I called the top almost perfectly based on the 821 cross on the daily. That worked out absolutely phenomenally. I called the top on her fund basically back here, and it's now down, what? I mean, we can just look. It's down substantially since then and never even came back to fill the gap. So it's already down 20%, from when it sold off. And if I'm correct and it sells off massively still, it's going to be much, much worse. So just be careful. Look at people that have done phenomenally well over 20 years or 25 years or whatever. She was talking a bunch of trash about Michael Burry. I understand Michael Burry is one of those people that has called like 10 out of the last like 5 market tops or so Sprott says. I get it. He's always bearish or whatever, but he has a proven track record and has made a lot of people, including himself, a lot of money. And if you look at his fund over time, it has exponentially outperformed Cathie Wood's fund. So for him to short her fund, he must be seeing something that I'm seeing also. But more importantly, if you look at their 2 track records and put them side by side, it's not even close. It's not even close. So for her to come out and say he just doesn't understand it, Michael Burry, you just don't understand it. You did well during the housing crash, but you just don't understand the future and you don't get it. That's what people that are idiots say. Because if you're actually smart and someone doesn't understand something, you explain to them and make them understand, and then they say, oh shit, you're right, actually. But if you just come out on a bunch of interviews and say, you just don't understand, and you run a marketing campaign for yourself and your fund while you've literally made no one any money for the last 9 months, you're probably as close to a fraud as possible. Or maybe you just bought into you drank your own Kool-Aid and you joined your own cult. And that's fine. You can be the cult leader and also be in the cult. But just make sure at the end, you don't end up with $5 billion and everybody else doesn't end up broke. So, because that's what I think is going to happen.